Today we're going to work with CoSpaces. This is the introduction lesson to go through the step-by-step when you first introduce CoSpaces. So we've assumed you've logged in. We're going to create a new blank space. Here is the environment to work in. You'll notice that there's a grid at the bottom. It's important to introduce your students to the X, Y, and Z coordinates. You'll also notice that there is a camera here. Now this is the view when you first start. What view will you take when you look into it through a 360-degree angle? We'll talk more about that in a minute. So the first step I have the students work on is they'll come down here to the lower left, and you'll notice these tabs down here, Library, Upload, and Environment. We'll choose Environment. We'll click on our environment in the lower left-hand corner here, the gray and blue rectangle. There's a number to choose from. Students can choose whichever one they'd like. I'm going to choose the mountain one right here. And I'll click on that tab again to hide it. And you'll notice here, you'll see if I kind of move my cursor around, I can click and hold down, and you'll see how I've got to get comfortable in that X, Y, and Z space at 3 dimensions. Depending on your Chromebook, you can use the touchpad to zoom in and zoom out. I can also use the arrow keys to physically move around, depending on what I'm looking for. So the next step we'll do is in the lower left-hand corner. I'm going to click on this little tab here for the library. And you'll see here, there's characters, there's nature, there's all kinds of different stuff. The first thing I have the students do is click on animals, and they can choose whatever animal they'd like. There's a number here that are kind of included in the pro version. If you don't have them all shown here, you might be on the free version, which you can do most of the things, but there's a handful of items that you're not able to do. I'm going to grab a dog and drag that dog out here to the middle. So here's my item here. Here's my character. And you notice when I click on him once, there'll be certain tools that will appear above him. So I'll click on him once, and the first thing is this blue line at the bottom. The blue line just turns that item around on the x-axis. I'm now going to look up here on the top so you can kind of see what these things are. We'll start here in the rotation mode. In the upper left is a little square with 2 arrows around it. Click on that. And this gives me that true X, Y, and Z total flexibility, so I can control them if I want to flip them over or turn them at a certain angle. You'll also notice here that if I click off from that, that toggle there is something I see a lot of students don't realize that when I click away from it, I'm still actually toggled to that X, Y, and Z controller until I untoggle that blue button right there. The next step, if I click on it once, I'm going to go to the one right below that. These drag up and down, the vertical drag right here. So if I go up and down, you'll also notice that I can't go any further down than the floor, the ground. So that's as low as I can go. This one beside it here, drag to scale. If I click and hold that, that's just how big your animal is. And of course, this is all in relation to other items. So right now, this dog could really be any size because we don't know how close or how far he is. But we want to think of that as we go forward to other items that are around in his vicinity. Then finally, the last little toggle up here in the upper right, if I click on that, this is if I wanted to move him forward, backward, up, and down. And I can do that just dragging him around as well. It works the same. So now we have our animal. Let's see what it looks like if I click on the viewer. So again, I mentioned that this is the view that I'm going to start with. The very first thing I'm going to see is from that angle. If I wanted to change that, I could also move the camera up or down. I can move it back or forward depending on where I want it to be when I first started to see it from the other perspective. The upper right-hand corner, we'll click play. And there's my dog right there. And I can click and hold down. Now, if I had goggles on right now, or use the CoSpaces app, I could be viewing this with my phone, and I could see it at truly 360 degrees. Right now on the laptop, I can just move it around with my mouse. All right, let's have the dog do some things here. So if I want the dog to animate, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on my item here. You'll notice a little menu will come up. Let's change the color. So I've got name, code, speech, physics, animation, material. I'm going to click on this. Now these are just different colors. Some items will actually have different types of materials. We'll just make the dog, let's make him be red. So we're going to make a red dog here and click away from it. Very good. And now if I double click on it again, go up to name. You can keep them by default. A name will come with it, but typically you may want to name them something specifically so you can find it later on. If I had a CoSpaces landscape where I had multiple dogs, I might want to name each one separately. Go down the lower corner here where it says use in CoBlocks and blocking. I'm going to check that on, and that's going to allow me to access it from the coding perspective. Up here on the right, there's a little white coding box. I'm going to click on that. And now we're going to start to get into the coding perspective. Now, there's some choices here. My recommendation is using code blocks. You can jump to JavaScript if you want the text version, but we're going to start here. So the first thing I'm going to do is go down to events, and I'm going to say I have the different options here. When it collides with something, when it's hovered, when it's clicked. I'm going to drag over when dog is hovered. Now you notice here that these little notch up at the top snaps together with a little divot that comes down. So they should snap right in place. You'll notice right there. And if they don't, then you may not be able to use that item with that interface. You'll also notice here with dog was selected. That's because I chose in the name to allow him to be there. If you don't choose that, then nothing would appear there. It would say item. So you want to make sure you've selected him. So right now it's going to say when he's hovered over, what's going to happen? Well, I want him to say bark. So I'm going to go over to actions. Scroll down here where it says, I'm going to use my cursor here. These are purple, so I know that these will snap into this little divot right here. We'll have them say, drag that over here, snap it in. So dog will say bark for 2 seconds when I hover over him. All right, let's see what our code looks like. I hit play. I've got my dog here. If I put my cursor over the dog, you notice how it changes. It says bark, and it goes away again. Bark, and it goes away again. Perfect. Now I want him to move. So if I click on the dog, he's going to move forward. I'm going to go back down to events, drag over when the dog is clicked, snap that right in there right here. What's going to happen? He's actually going to go to transform. We can change the scale, the size, the distance of different things. We're just going to say he's going to move. I'm going to drag that light blue one in there. He's going to move the dog, how many meters? 1 meter forward in 1 second. So how far he goes and how fast he goes is dictated by these two numbers. So if I want him to go 5 meters in 5 seconds, it's the same scale, it's the same ratio, but it's going to go a little bit further. So let's see what happens when I click on him. I'm going to click play. There's my dog. Click on him, and there he moves forward. Now, of course, what's the problem is it doesn't look like he's actually walking. It just looks like he's sliding along on ice or roller skates. So let's go back and we'll make him so he will move and walk forward. I'm going to come back down here to actions, and I'm going to look for the action that's animate. Set animation. So when I click on the dog, I'm going to slide it above the move here. I'm going to change that from sitting, kind of standing there, from don't animate to walking. So he's going to walk, and then when he's done, I'm going to animate him again. Right, snap that right in here, and now he's going to sit. All right, so if I put my cursor over him, he should say bark. If I click on him, he should walk 5 meters in 5 seconds, and then when he's done, he will sit. Let's see what happens. Play. So here's my dog here. If I put my cursor over, he barks for 2 seconds. If I click on him, he moves forward. There's the animation of walking, and when he's done, he should sit. Perfect. So that's the introduction lesson. Obviously, there's more advanced things you can do with that as we go forward, but this is a great place to start with your students.